Hey, what's up? This is Scott with Level Up Tutorials, and in this video, I'm going to be showing you how to start thinking in components. We're going to start reworking our project directories and start rewriting things to be a more component-based system. So let's get started now. So by now, this page is getting kind of unwieldy. We have a whole bunch of stuff going in here. For instance, we have this like my resolutions title, we have a form, and we have what's going to be our actual data. And all of these things themselves could and should be their own components. Now, the one thing you can think of about components is if something is going to be used more than once, then obviously make it a component. More than that, if something is its own chunk of content, make it a component. I find once I notice a component getting a little bit too large, I'll start to see what can be its own component. Now, there's varying levels of this. Some people make components for buttons and little tiny things like that. Other people make components for much larger things and all around that scale. It's sort of what works for you and your team. Obviously, people are going to be having different opinions about the size of components and things like that. I'm not going to be telling you to make your components any sort of way. However, I would recommend to keep your components nice and organized and to make them as frequently as it makes sense for you. So in this video, we're going to be talking about React components, and what we want to do is we want to go ahead and take something like this form here, and we want to actually have this form be in its own component. So now I'm going to make a new file. I can just throw this in the root right now. Of course, we're going to be updating that in the next lesson once we go over file structure and things like that. Basically, I want to make this file be something like resolutions form, and that's going to be the name of the component as well. So make sure your file names and components really sort of tell a good picture about what exactly that component is. Obviously, you want to not make this be something totally arbitrary like duck. I mean, if this is a resolutions form, why would it be anything else? Okay, so resolutions form .jsx. Now let's go ahead and actually make this. We can import React. We can import React. And this time, check this out. This is going to be a different technique. I can update my other components, but I'll show you this. We can have a comma here, then inside of brackets, write component like that from, and then a string React. Now, the reason why you would do this is now we have access to this component without saying react.component. You'll notice up here in our app, we have react.component. If you have it like this, we can now just say component instead of react.component. Not a big thing, but it will save you a little bit. Now let's go ahead and let's do export default resolutions form. And now we can say this extends component. Notice how we're not doing the tracker React around this? That's because we don't need to pull in any data in this particular component. So you only need to use tracker React when you're pulling in data. Okay, so we now have resolutions form extends component. Let's go ahead and we have this component. If you remember from our very first component, what we need is a render function. Inside of this render function, it needs a return. And this return is just going to have parentheses like this. So now let's go back to our app.jsx. Let's scroll down here and let's grab this entire form. I'm going to grab it out of here and I'm going to paste it directly into this return. Now you'll notice some things here. We have this onSubmit this.add resolution.bind this. If we were to head to our actual website right now, it's going to complain about a lot of things, but it certainly won't let us use the form even if it didn't complain about some things right now, because this.add resolutions is still in app.jsx. So let's also come here and grab that. Let's grab this whole method right here, pull it out, and plop it in directly above the render function. Okay, and Now our app.jsx just got a lot skinnier, just got a lot smaller here. We now have the render and we just have the resolutions, and really all this is doing is bringing in the data. And actually looks like I forgot the class. We're needing to export default class resolutions form. That is my bad there. Again, if you notice that, that's good. So we're exporting resolutions form as the default class of this document here. Now we can come back to app.jsx, and this should stop complaining by now. So now what we're seeing is this my resolutions and the text, but obviously no form. So let's go ahead to app.jsx and import our form. So we can say import, and then we can just import resolutions form from, then we want to say this current directory resolutions form.jsx. And now we have access to the resolutions form component. Now, if you remember, we can use this component now simply by just having an HTML element. So resolutions form is going to grab everything. It's going to go to here, which is going to go to here, which is going to look in here for the default class here, and it's going to output this render function. Let's head to our page, and as you can see now, we now have our form, and if we add something new like do handstands, you can see that although obviously we're not outputting this, you can see if we open up our Meteor tools, we now have do handstands inside of our list of resolutions. Cool, so my resolutions here is looking a little bit better, as in we now have a component here that has its own unique piece of functionality. This new resolutions form, all of this does is add a new resolutions form. And check it out, if we wanted to use this anywhere else on the site ever again on another page, I'm just going to drop another one, any of these here. You can imagine this is like another template or another page. Just by simply dropping in that component, you can have both of these, and either of them will work independently from one another, but they'll both actually take care of their expected functionality. So that's really the power of these components, is this extreme reusability. We can just, like I said, we can drop this form in anywhere we need it now, and it's going to work. Now, one thing we haven't touched on really is props. Now, a prop is the ability to pass data into one of these components. Now, to illustrate this, let's go ahead and just create a new component. So new file here, and this file is just going to be resolution single.jsx. So this is going to be an individual resolution. Now we can once again import react comma component. Make sure your component is in capitalized, and we can say from react semicolon. Now we can export default class resolution single extends component. Now, once again, this is going to be, we don't have to use tracker react. Even though we're going to be displaying an individual component in here, we're not going to be grabbing that data from this component. We're going to be grabbing the data from the parent of that, which is going to be passing that data into this individual resolution. So let's go to say render, and now we can return. At this point, you should be getting used to this render return stuff. So we now, inside of here, really just need the actual sort of shell for what a single resolution is going to look like. So let's go ahead and have a list item, because we're going to have this be in a list. And we can now say, I'm going to put this on a new line actually, this, which is going to refer to this object itself, dot props dot resolution dot text. So this doesn't exist yet, But in a second, we're going to be passing data into this component, and you'll see props in action. So props refers to essentially the data that's passed in here. Resolution is that individual piece of data, because you can pass in tons of data into a single component, and this is how you identify that, and this grabs the individual property from that piece of data. Now we can also have, let's copy and paste this. We can say this dot resolution dot, and then we can say complete. And that's going to give us whether this is completed or not. Now let's go ahead and close off this list item. Cool, so we now are exporting resolution single, which means to use it in app.jsx, we need to import it. I'm gonna just copy this whole resolutions form line here, and we can change this text to say resolution single, like that. So we're now importing resolution single, where we can then use it again down here. I'm going to use it in place of this, so I'm actually going to turn this into a UL. Okay, so we now have an unordered list, and I'm going to use the resolution single component. Now this is where we actually get to pass props into the component. We can do that by giving this an actual property by saying resolution. If you'll remember from our resolution single, we use that right here. So this text has to be the exact same as what this text is. So resolution is equal to, and now we can pass this in data. To do that, we just have brackets, and we can pass in this res, the first item in our list here. Let's just get rid of this. We no longer need this dot text. So as you can see here, res is grabbing the entire object of resolutions. I'm passing in just the very first resolution, which is an object, into this variable, which is called a prop. And I'm then accessing it with this .props.resolution.text and this .resolution.complete. Okay, let's actually come in here and let's refresh, see if we have any errors. And as you can see, we now have this finish React Meteor series inside of an unordered list. Now the reason why completed is not outputting is because it is a Boolean and not a string. If we wanted this Boolean to be output as a string, you'll notice that we can just use straight JavaScript in here. So we can say just.to string. And now, once this refreshes, we should see false here. Okay, so as you can see, anything within brackets here is going to allow us to just access JavaScript as normal. Without that, we would not be able to. So cool, we've now built two components here, and you can start to get the feel of things. We have our resolutions form and a resolution single. Now this really reflects the data much better than just a whole bunch of HTML here. You can now see that, okay, we have a single resolution and it's accepting an object which is one resolution. That resolution is then outputting that data here. Now this is going to make even more sense once we need to have functions that do things like updating this resolution or maybe completing this resolution. Let's say we have a checkbox, then that's all going to live inside of here, inside of this resolution single. So all of that functionality gets wrapped up in one component. So hopefully this has got you thinking in components quite a bit more. So in the next video, we're going to do a lot more cleanup. We're going to have this code looking a lot nicer, and we're actually going to have the site looking a lot nicer by adding some styles. So as always, this is Scott with Level Up Tutorials. If you want to help support the creation of these videos and many, many more to come in the future, head to store.leveluptutorials.com and purchase this series right now, because you're going to get a lot of extra content that's not available in this series, such as how to use React Router, how to get server-side rendering, and more. So you can purchase from store.leveluptutorials.com or head to that same site and sign up to be a Level Up Pro to have access to streaming this content before it's available on YouTube. As always, this is Scott with Level Up Tutorials. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.